So my question is, do you think Donald Trump uses tariffs as a short-term fix or a short-term solution when he wants to get at bad policy? Or do you think this is a long-term scenario that we're going to see from President Trump with tariffs being a fact of life?
Well, first of all, I have to say, as a libertarian, I'm not too keen on the tariffs. But I mean, what is Donald Trump doing? He is doing what he was elected for, to put America first. And if there is an imbalance in trade, and yeah, there is tariffs that the Europeans impose on American goods, why should he not impose tariffs on goods from Europe, for instance? So he is actually putting his people first, and that is what really democracy is all about: is that the elected government is acting in the best interest of the people, and that is what Donald Trump is doing. So putting his people first, I don't see anything wrong with that. He at least has the guts to just do it, and he's pretty much doing. That's, by the way, the reason they hate him so much. He is simply doing what we have been told by our governments for decades now. Oh, it can't be done. It's impossible to even do. And he's just doing it. And he's proving them liars. And once again, that's the reason they hate him so much. So, I mean, I obviously I can't speak for his motives, but I would think that is a tool that he just took out to prove a point. And he's imposing these tariffs, and just to see if the other countries come around and maybe negotiate with him, because that's the other point. They right out refuse to even speak to him, or they contradict or counteract on what he's trying to do. Take the instance with Ukraine. He wanted to negotiate a peace deal, but now all the Europeans pretty much backed Zelensky, and the Canadian government did that too. So they're pretty much counteracting what he's trying to do. So why should he be friendly with everyone else if he's being treated like crap?
Well, that's an excellent point. And last night, of course, Trump paused the military aid to Ukraine. A lot of people, including myself, would say that should be a permanent thing because Zelensky has no interest in going to the peace table as long as the United States is subsidizing his war and continuing to provide massive military assistance. Do you think this is the beginning of the end of military assistance to Ukraine?
Um, I don't know about that, but once again, let's go back. What actually happened in the White House, right? I mean, the left side and the mainstream media, they're all convinced that, JD Vance and Donald Trump pretty much ganged up on him, and even tricked him, into that whole situation. I don't think that was the case. And I watched the entire, I think it was 49 minutes. I watched the entire thing. And as you go through, they were rather amicable with each other. I mean, Donald Trump, he was even joking around with them. So it was a rather relaxed conversation. It began to become difficult when actually Zelensky was repeatedly speaking about the fact that he would not don't want a ceasefire. He wouldn't accept the ceasefire as being like a first step to then negotiate a peace deal. He kept, I mean, to a certain degree, understandable. He kept calling President Putin names. He called him killer. He called him terrorist. So if if you are really interested in getting a peace deal and restoring peace, maybe the first step is to at least publicly stop calling your adversary pretty much every name in the book. Zelensky, however, did not do that. And what was also clear, he was speaking about, you might remember, he always used the term, what he wants is a just and lasting peace. So what exactly does just and lasting peace mean? Well, I think it means he only will accept a peace deal if his conditions are met. And he still thinks that he could restore Ukraine to the situation back in 22. Well, he has the right to do that, of course. The thing is this, however, um, once Putin invaded Ukraine, which is an absolute no-go. I mean, my party takes sovereign nations and the sovereignty of a nation very seriously, and you do not invade another nation. And you, first of all, you do not do it with military means. Putin did that, yes, and he was in the wrong by doing so. But the point is this: had there been a negotiation back then when it happened, let's say March, April, May, June, July, maybe even the end of 22, there might have been a good chance that because no one knew exactly how it was going, there might have been a good chance that a peace deal could have been achieved, and restoring it to the status quo of the beginning of 22. But now we are 3 years into this whole war, and it's not looking like that Ukraine is going to win this war. It's impossible, to be quite frank. And so why should Putin now surrender any territory? And Zelensky made that clear in that meeting in the Oval Office when he said there cannot be a peace deal with Ukraine surrendering any territory. Well, get with the program, I would say. Like I said, it's pretty difficult. And on top of that, if you look back at what the European nations did when this whole war started out, yeah, they were, praising the Ukrainian people and Zelensky for their bravery. And yes, of course, we will stand with you and support you. Well, in the case of the German government, what did they do? They sent 50 helmets. Seriously? 50 helmets? That is your kind of support you're giving to Ukraine? So like I said, they didn't act in the beginning. And now they think they, can act and can produce all the weapons that we don't even have the industry anymore to be. We don't have the energy for it either. So I mean, at this point, it's really a no-win situation for anyone. But going back to the conversation, Zelensky made it quite clear he is not interested in restoring peace. The peace that he wants is pretty much the rest of the world invading Russia and destroying Russia. That's his kind of understanding of restoring peace. But I don't know if that's the right way to go.
Well, and it's not like there weren't problems prior to the Russian invasion of 3 years ago. Russia had deep concerns about Ukrainian activities in the Donbass region, and Russian-speaking Ukrainians, frankly, wanted to leave the country. The average Canadian thinks that this all started 3 years ago. And
No,
when you take a deeper look at it, you realize it's not only centuries old in terms of historically the animosity that's
right.
existed, but the fact
I
that
mean,
Russia had concerns about
actually,
the
you,
Donbass region.
you don't have to go all the way back in, history, God knows when. At the very late, this war did not start in February of 22. At the very latest, it started in November of 2014. And with the events on the Maidan. And you can even
Yeah.
go back further to 2007. Timoshenko, remember the lady from Ukraine? She was elected president of Ukraine with a vast majority. She was so popular. However, Timoshenko realized that she did not want, or her people, the Ukrainian people, they did not want to join the EU. And that's when it all started. So they slapped her. I mean, they employed lawfare against her back then. So she was arrested on some kind of Trump up charges, whatever. Then they had presidential elections, and she was again elected by a vast majority of the Ukrainian people to be the president. They slapped her again with all kinds of trumped up charges because she did not do as she was told by the globalitarian misanthropists, which is, hey, no, look, the Ukraine has to come into EU. And this has continued ever since. Escalated then in November 2014 with the events on the Maidan, where Ukrainian people, they were just shot left and right. Back then, we were told it was the so-called pro-Russian rebels. Nowadays, we know it wasn't Russians shooting these people. It was the Ukrainians themselves shooting at their own people. So this conflict pretty much was kind of flaring ever since then. And everything you saw after that, you had President Yanukovych. He also said, no, the negotiation talks with the EU. My people don't want to join EU, so we will freeze these negotiations. We're not going to discuss it at this point. And yet again, that's when it brought about a regime change, and a president was installed that was in line with the globalitarian misanthropists. So it's like the Ukrainian people, to my understanding, have never really been asked. And if they were asked, they were just overlooked. And it was done, things were done against their will. And here we are today.
Yes, yeah. You mentioned the so-called peace settlement or the negotiations the EU has been doing with this. And I had to laugh at UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who nobody's ever been able to tell me why he earned a knighthood, by the way, because it's beyond me how a lifetime bureaucrat becomes a sir. But here he is saying the European Union is not only going to undermine your policy and your peace plan, Mr. Trump, we're going to create our own. But guess what? The United States has to back it up because Great Britain can't fight a war with anybody. They have more admirals than they have warships right now. They have more horses in their army than tanks. So don't you think it's highly presumptuous of people like Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron to talk about taking the war to the Russians?
I
But
know.
the United States has to back us up for that, please.
It's not only presumptuous, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. So, as you said, so Zelensky was invited to the White House. And I mean, he had been propped up. That conversation that he was going to have with Donald Trump, it had been prepared by Macron's visit and also by Starmer's visit, right? And one American journalist said all Zelensky had to do was show up there, preferably in a suit, because he was specifically asked to wear a suit, and just to underline and emphasize that, yeah, we are, trying to negotiate a peace here. So he was specifically to do that. So all he had to do was show up there in a suit, smile, say thank you, and have lunch. That's all he had to do, and he couldn't even do that. So, like I said, he was propped up. It was prepared, but he felt the need to, demand what kind of peace deal was going to be negotiated. And in a way, by calling the adversary, like I said, every kind of name in the book, it was bound to fail. And then what the European leaders did, after Donald Trump had kicked them out of the White House, how embarrassing is that, right? So they immediately, applauded Zelensky, and he did the right thing, and he stood up for us. No, he didn't stand up for us. He stood up for his own self. He didn't even stand up for the Ukrainian people, I want to argue. He stood up for himself, and he was just being like, I don't know, like a 3-year-old not getting his way, pretty much. That's how he came across, as far as I'm concerned. So this was completely a failed mission. And the European leaders, they all opted to back him up. And now they're like the strong guys. They want to take on Russia. Excuse me, you with your Green Deal, I mean, you industrialized our nations. And I'm terribly sorry if you really think that you can produce a mass production of weapons now that we would need with windmills and solar panels. Well, good luck with that one. It is so ridiculous what they're doing. It's so ridiculous.
Absolutely.
I mean, even
There's
Keir Starmer, that really shocked me when he said, we are prepared or willing to put boots on the grounds and planes in the air. Like, what kind of planes are you talking about? What kind of planes are you really talking about?